community space availability and permitting rules and procedures. Everyone knows that space will always be in short supply, forever. The primary community space we're talking about is the cultural center, which is 548 Main Street, the downstairs space, and also Good Shepherd Chapel, which is very widely used and intensely used community space. But there are others in the portfolio which include Sports Park, which include in possibility when it becomes available, Blackwell House when that's completed, and basically anything else we can think of. So it's one thing to have space, maintain space, and let it be potentially available. It's another thing to develop rules for fair use by as many organizations as we can without them impinging on one another over time, with the understanding that some will have the need and the ability to schedule particular events and usages far in advance. Others will need space almost on ad hoc basis. We have expenses and requirements that need to be met. We have the desire to make space as widely available and easily available as possible, especially to these various community nonprofit groups, particularly with regard to the cultural center. We'd like it to be at cost. What's cost? I'm not quite sure what it is this moment, but we'd like it to be at cost. And we're not interested in making money on these groups. We're interested in not expending extra funds where some groups are able to use space and other groups are not. So we'd like the groups to carry their weight, and we'd like them to enjoy the maximum possible usage consistent with our requirements of having space be undedicated, with us having fair availability, and with just the historic needs of all sorts of groups in the community needing things for use at various times. So I'd like to say that this is a kickoff session. We're introducing the issues. We don't expect to get to a resolution today, but I'd like to move this along pretty quickly and get to a resolution by September, if there's any way at all possible. So I'm interested in anyone else from the corporation or board with some comments.
Mr. Chair, before we go further, I believe that the design for the cultural center has been discussed in detail, and I believe that we have a bid out for the center and the configuration, so that we can have it ready for that time. I believe there's enough input into that design to make it accommodating to those groups that showed interest in it. So I just want to put that on. We do have the cultural center going forward, and I think Steve can speak to that.
The RFP after the construction drawings, and I think next week they do it, a week after, and then we'll get construction drawings finalized, and then we get going with the RFP for the construction work, renovation work.
Okay. Part of the timing for all of this had to do with our kind of arm wrestling with the insurers for reimbursements and recovery from damage that was suffered from floods, structurally in the building, and then also because of Sandy. So.
And Mr. Chairman, the truth of the matter is Don did a good job in getting an extension of time for payment. Otherwise, we would have been penniless.
Okay. So that's good. Especially the cost is well over $100,000 for each space. Any thoughts?
What are you thinking of? I guess RIOC's gonna have to manage that space, isn't it? Or is that not necessarily the case?
Well, we right now manage use of Good Shepherd Plaza through a permitting process. The cultural center has so many nooks and crannies compared to Good Shepherd Plaza. Good Shepherd Chapel, that I would like to see an intermediary organization in place, particularly the Main Street Theater and Dance Alliance, if we can work something up. The idea would be that since they have the most intense occupancy of the space, they have programs running all the time in various positions in the space, that they would be in a good position to keep eyes on it and to set some parameters for fair use and for a reserving system. So this is something that I personally am interested in seeing develop, so that we are removed from the equation if at all possible, because it's a clumsy operation for us. Charlie?
And in truth, it would cost a lot more. I don't think we have the personnel at this point in time to manage something like the cultural center. It's very different from Good Shepherd, which has only a certain amount of usage. Which means that if in fact we don't have to hire somebody to manage the cultural center, the costs to the groups using it will be greatly reduced.
So,
Yes, if we had a manager, that would become part of the operating expenses, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
at the time of staff in order to handle this and other properties in the portfolio.
Sure, because even a lowly paid person with a full benefit package, I mean, $50,000 a year, which means we'd have to derive $1,000 a week out of the place just to pay that person's salary. I see.
Sorry, are we allowed to ask questions to
Well,
add to the
let me
conversation?
go through the table first,
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'll open up to public comments. Well, anyone else? Okay.
Well, my question was just gonna be, have the other groups seen the plans, but if they're open it up,
Well, the plans have been developed very slowly, the physical plans. And so other groups have looked, commented, weighed in on their desires and requirements for the physical plan. We only have so much space. When we start to touch it, part of the requirements are that we create modern ADA compliant access to the extent possible. So some halls may be a little wider than they used to be, that sort of thing, which does affect some of the spaces. And then the idea was that we wanted to have more of the space be multi-purpose, with flexible dividers in some places that didn't exist before. If we keep revisiting the plans and fine-tuning them, we'll be still in this process for some time yet, because the groups have overlapping similar desires, but they're not the same. And so, in my experience, we can keep this iterative process going for quite some time and not have space to use at a particular date. We've done this for a while. We have plans in process, so the plans were the best we can come up with given time constraints and given cost constraints. The groups will speak to how they find them unsatisfactory, but really I'd like to move the discussion into usage at this time, with the idea that if we have a flexible means, a fair means of providing usage, that we can accommodate as many people as possible. Okay, so groups that would like to speak.
Yeah, I missed the beginning of the meeting, apologize. But you were talking about managing the cultural center, right?
Right.
Okay. If you're going to bring somebody to manage the place for $50,000, those $50,000 are going to come from the organizations who are going to be occupying the space. It means that we need to cash money that we can utilize it for good deed.
Right, and so, you
I
missed the part where I was explaining that I'm attempting not to do that. And I'm attempting not to do that by relying on the good offices, subject to our review and control of the Main Street Theater Dance Alliance as being neutral and fair. You know, they have the most extensive use in place. And they have a track record of accommodation to all comers.
Yeah, but it has to be in coordination with the rest of the organizations, so the decision should be like.
Well, we'll keep it in mind that they're remembering the old cultural center that existed, that was created back in the 90s. There was language in that agreement which could never be recreated today. You know, $10 a year type of deal that allowed groups who had a protest that felt that they were being treated unfairly to come back to RIOC. As the grantor of the use. So something like that will end up. And you also missed, we're starting discussions. We'd like to try to get it done by September if there's any way, but it's not, the idea is not that we're going to reach a conclusion today. But opening it up, we'll do what we can to get something that's fair and usable and works without us having to intercede at every point, which becomes very cumbersome and could become expensive in a way that we don't want it to be. We want this to be at the lowest cost point possible, consistent with us staying whole and everyone being able to use the space in a respectful, clean, fair, safe way.
So I just want to make sure I heard you right, and I think I did. So right now, this is the first conversation, basically, that right now there is no written documents in place in terms of how this is going to work, in terms of perhaps the theater and then the other organizations. There's no fee structure yet, and these are things that you want to try to work on and have done hopefully by September, and hopefully that's following parallel to whatever the next set of activities regarding the construction, reconstruction, redecoration, getting the place ready for whoever the inhabitants are going to be with the theater. Is that what I'm understanding?
Right.
Is there a projected timetable? Do you think you'll be done before the end of the year? Do we think that this might carry over? And the reason I'm asking is we're a week away from the first anniversary of two organizations being homeless and other organizations wanting to think about their spaces. So, I know I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just very calendar sensitive.
The summer becomes a hard time to schedule meetings, but I'm around this summer, and hopefully either Faye or Kathy or both will be around, so we can schedule these committee meetings as necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to be moving this very quickly with meetings every other week or whatever is necessary to try to get this done quickly.
Do we have a sense of which organizations might need access to that space so far as we know right now?
We can guess, but we don't know. And I'd like to not be in a position of knowing exactly who it is.
Okay.
What we're doing is opening for maximum potential use. And with the understanding that there are groups that will be, of their nature, reserving well in advance places, slots, however we want to describe it, because their requirements, and there'll be, if it goes the way I think it will, there'll be a way that can happen.
I just want to be comfortable that all of the stakeholders, people with an interest, have some input into the process that we're beginning today of setting up rules and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, it's a hard thing, but a room that's being used on a rigid schedule, for months and months and months, it's used now and then it's vacant another time, the following day or 2 days or whatever it might be, and if there's respectful use.
You're way ahead of me.
Yeah.
You're way ahead of me. I assume it would work that way also.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure that as these things get cast in concrete and plans are made, programmatic plans, that all the stakeholders will say so or input into your process. That's what I'm saying. As we set up, as we organize.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's being done, and people who have, have certain interests in certain times are being accommodated. But I would like to say that all these rules and regulations and processes must be done within the parameters of the law and of public authorities law. I think that there has been sometimes, as you know, we've had an audit and another audit, and so we've been looked at fairly with a lot of scrutiny. And some of the ways we use them, as Howard said and the Chairman said, that we could not do today. In fact, we cannot do today. And what we're looking at with everyone, not as religious organizations, but as not-for-profits. And whatever usage that's needed for not-for-profits, that's how it's going to be, and that's how we're going to pose it. Otherwise, if we do not, then we will not be able to use it for religious organizations at all. And I would hand it over to Don to, maybe speak a little more on that.
May I add something? Comment on what you just said? You are excluding religious organizations?
No, we're
No,
not.
no, they're
No.
not.
What
That's
Charlene
not
said is
what
we're not
they're doing.
excluding religious organizations. We're treating everybody as not-for-profits, so therefore we can have the religious organizations still doing what you guys want to do on a non-exclusive basis.
I'm sorry I wasn't
hard
clear.
day
No,
for
no,
you.
no,
Work
fair
in
enough.
Russian
Yeah.
all
And it's
the
very
time.
hot outside, so it's hot.
It's a late
No.
to the response.
No, it's the exact opposite. What Charlie is saying, we're trying to legally accommodate everybody
Right.
in a non-exclusive way.
If we look at it as religious organizations, then we cannot accommodate you. If we look at you as a not-for-profit organization, then we can say it's just being rented out to a not-for-profit.
Thank you.
Right, and so it's useful for us to work directly with a demonstrable not-for-profit as an intermediary in organizing usage. So that provides a little bit of, a buffer, let's say. So, again, fair and available usage is a cornerstone.
Can I ask something? So you mentioned that there was a lot of input from stakeholders to the space design. Has the space design now been crystallized as of the last meeting when we looked at the floor plans, or has it changed?
Well, it's pretty much the same, just minor little tweaks, pretty much the same.
Some of the changes are just pure physical requirements of the space.
Are the space changes the same as when we met on May 13th and we saw the last set of plans? The set of plans that are in the RFP that's being addressed right now have some differences from the May 13th plans. Not big things, but there's some meaningful things. So I don't know if those were the tweaks. Okay, so will there be any other changes, or do you think that was the last set of changes for now?
That was what was on the schematic.
But it was
And we don't anticipate any other changes, so that's pretty much it. But
But it should be noted that now you've got an RFP for design, construction drawing, and the people who prepare those drawings, be they engineers, designers, or architects, might have some necessary changes to make based on laws and stuff like that.
So
Right, so it's we have the broad parameters that we're working from. It'll be just refined as required. So it will reflect the actual requirements for construction.
But from what you've seen with the tweaks, is it workable for you?
I would say for us, it's workable, but since there was no other meeting to really ask more questions or anything beyond the May 13th meeting, we actually did meet with Charlene and Don and Steve once since then, just to kind of get some more information. But I guess the question would be, so as we're going through this process, where we're going to be, one group is going to be working in the cultural center, getting it ready for its inhabitants, the theater and whoever else comes along. There's parallel to that are the people who are working out the agreements or the paperwork for how people are going to come into the cultural center, right? Am I saying that right? How the nonprofits will find their way in, and will there be? How will the theater and RIOC figure out how to bring people in? Will it be who's on first? How to get in? You know, who's coming in right away? Is somebody coming in later? I guess I could be getting ahead of you, but I don't want to not have that question on the floor.
I'm sure it'll be plain and simple.
I'm sorry.
Three words, who's on first, okay?
Okay, go.
You know, anniversaries are very hard for some of us.
Just, can you explain how you're going to be treating religious organizations as not being religious organizations? Does that mean that they can't perform?
Another
Well,
form of
they are a not-for-profit.
Right.
All
Right.
religious
Yeah, that's
organizations are not-for-profit, they're under that, and so we'll be pretty much blind to what everyone's doing, it's a not-for-profit.
So, but they can perform whatever worship
Right.
services
Whatever they do when they rent the space is their business.
So that
As long as
passes
it's not illegal.
So if they're performing worship services, you're not going to know about
They're
it.
renting space.
We don't care.
You don't care. So,
Right.
okay, so
Right.
that passes constitutional.
Because it's not, everybody's going to be looked at as a not-for-profit. Those not-for-profits are going to rent the space, it's a cultural center, whatever culturally they want to do in that space at that time that has been paid for will treat everybody equally, so we don't have an issue. Because it's equal to all not-for-profits.
Right, we're not involving ourselves with the particular usages of the space. We're concerned about fair availability and trying to keep the costs as low as possible for these not-for-profit groups.
Yeah, it's pretty much content neutral.
You have available space for not-for-profits of which the religious groups are one.
There are a lot of rooms,
Performing worship services as
Whatever.
opposed to general non.
whatever,
Whatever they do.
whatever they
I'm
It's
just-
content neutral. It's content neutral.
From our
It's a good
perspective, it doesn't matter what they happen to be doing with that space and time that they have. It's just we're in the business of making that available as best we can.
Subject only to illegality.
Oh, yeah.
one question. There are a lot of rooms in there that are now marked storage. Can we rent the storage rooms? Will we be able to rent a storage room?
Don, we are still working on what storage is, what office space is,
Well,
what
rent is
space is.
separate.
Yeah.
Rent
Okay.
is separate from
Yeah.
community use.
Yes.
Rent changes everything in all of these
Yeah.
instances, right?
Right.
We're not talking about rent here and then
No.
Right, so we're talking about community use.
Yeah.
It may be that there are cabinets, but that's not where our concern right now. There may be
Yeah,
work surfaces, but that's not our concern right now.
Just avenues and all.
Yeah, something like
It's a
What
work
is
in
it?
progress.
that. Yeah.
In the final version of the drawings that are going to be worked on and part of the reconstruction, we're not, there's no new electrical work, there is work being done in terms of ventilation, electrical, plumbing, is any of that work being done in terms of, in the final drawings of the space, there are some different spaces that have multi-purpose uses. Will they have outlets, will they have all that,
It's all gonna be part of the
Yeah.
construction documents.
Okay.
So everything that's for code,
Okay,
so it's any reconfiguration that needs to be changed, electrical, HVAC or plumbing, it's all gonna be, there'll be, plumbing, electrical and HVAC, separate filings. So that's all gonna be signed off
right,
by the engineer,
okay,
for DOT and so forth.
all right.
Yes,
Sorry, but I'm a little bit confused. You mentioned the rent issue, and we're talking about using community space, so it's their space. In the cultural center for
Rent is not the right word.
There may
Permit
be
fee.
a fee of some sort, a permit involved, I don't know what there'll be. Rent is not the right word.
That's, yeah,
For usage.
that's right, that was never used.
So basically,
Is it for
the
storage space or is it for everything?
for usage. And we have to work out the terms, the concept being that while we try to minimize the carrying cost of the space, from our perspective, we would like to be whole at the end of the day
For the
through
second
some
meeting.
sort of usage fee structure. I don't know what it is. We charge a permit fee, for example, for the Shepherd Chapel. There may be a permit fee here, I don't know what the permit is, but that's the concept.
I think this is.
We didn't do this on purpose, by the way.
Okay.
It's not on purpose. We've been suffering
You
this all
could
day.
actually loosen your tie. We won't think anything less of you. In fact, we'll think better of you.
Okay, well, I'd like to move the discussion on,
Okay.
if
That's
there are
enough.
other points here.
No, I just want to say thank you to Stephen, to Charlene, and to Don, and to yourself, because there's been a level of high anxiety without the Mel Brooks movie here, and I think what you've come up with today so far is a very good beginning for everybody. So
Okay,
it's
and,
appreciated.
Very
advanced.
And as I said, we'd like to move this really forward as
And we'll
quickly
be
as we can.
here to help.
Okay.